Hello everyone, this is chapter 5 and this is the first Android project that you're going to do without simply just copying code from the book. So this will be a good one. I started the project for us and that's a zip file on Blackboard. Hopefully you've downloaded it and extracted it. I just put mine on my desktop and I'm just going to show you how to open it. So I think there's a couple of different ways you can do this, but I think this will be the safest bet. So go over here to File, the File menu, and then choose Open with the ellipsis after it. And then you'll have to navigate to wherever you unzipped it. For me, I put it on my desktop, so that would be C, Users, your username, and then Desktop. So, oh wait. I gotta find my desktop here. There's desktop, so I put mine right here, and this is the project right here. You might not have the Android icon yet if you haven't opened it. See, I've already opened it, so once you find your folder, go ahead and click OK here. And just to remind you, zip files sometimes add an extra folder, so there might be two Android user interface folders, but you want to click into the innermost one, the most nested one. So sometimes zip files do that. But all right, so you would click OK. I'm not going to because I've already got the project open, but this is probably what you'll see right here. No files are open, so this can be a little bit confusing. So if you look right here, it says open project view by hitting Alt+1 or Alt and 1. So I'm going to do that right now, and that'll open the project view over here to the left, and then you should be able to see the files for your project here. All right. So chapter 5 is about working with layouts and GUI components, and you should have already read the chapter and done the review questions by now, so this should all be familiar to you. But what I'm doing with this project is I'm going to go a little bit further, and we're going to talk about how you handle not only various device screen sizes, because remember your Android apps may run on tablets or phones, possibly TVs, or maybe even watches. But anyways, there's lots of different screen sizes to deal with, and there's a good way to handle all that in Android. But what we're going to deal with in this project is orientation changes. So when the phone or the device is in landscape mode, we're going to show one layout, and when it gets rotated to portrait mode, then we'll swap the layouts. And there's a pretty cool mechanism for that. So what I did is I created an extra layout folder. Now you can't, I don't know why this doesn't make any sense to me, but you can't see the folder that I created when you're in the Android view. You have to switch to the project view. So here's the project view, and now I got to drill down to find the resource directory, because that's where I'm working here. So that's an app, and then source, main, lots of nested folders here. So if you look here, I've created this folder called layout land. So this is a standard name, and Android, when your app runs, if the device is running in portrait mode, it'll use these layouts here. So I've created these layouts for us already. There's a grid layout, a linear layout, and a relative layout, and then there's also a main activity layout right here. So what I did is I just created those like you normally would create activities. And after those were created by Android, I created this layout-land folder, and Android is looking for this folder name, layout-land, and then you can see right here I just copied those same layout files right into this folder. So when the device is in portrait mode, which is straight up and down the way you normally hold a phone, our activities are going to use these layouts, but if the device gets rotated, then the activities are going to use these layouts here. So I'm just going to run the app real quick and show you what I did. Now, just so that we could tell these apart, each of these has a text view in them. But for these ones in the land folder, I've added a little bit of text to that message that says it's the landscape layout. So I'm going to pause the video right now and then fire up the emulator, and I'll be back in just a second. So the emulator has finally come up, and here is our main activity, and I'll explain what's going on here in a second. But what I want to show you first is that so it says main activity here, and I just threw an image view in there, which is, and this image is standard. It's created by default in any Android project that you create in Android Studio, and this is just the default launcher icon. So we've seen this. This is what appears when we in our home screen when we want to launch our apps, and we haven't changed these yet. We've just used the default one, so you've seen this before, but I'm just using it in the app as well, and you'll see how to do that too if you look in the layout for the main activity. But what I want to show you here is I can rotate the emulator by holding the Control key and F11 at the same time, and when I do, now you can see that this is a different layout, and I know that because in the landscape folder, or the -land folder that I showed you earlier, I added this little message here to the text view, and I also changed the layout a little bit. So right now the Android icon is aligning next to the text label right here. So that's Android is automatically making that change for me. It'll detect if there's a layout -land folder, and if there is, and if it's now notice this layout file has the same exact name as the one that we regularly use, but it's in a different folder. So let me just show you that one more time here. And unfortunately, I can't drag my I'll show you right here. Here's how I can get to it. So you can see right here in the layout land, these file names are all the same as these ones here. They're just in different folders. So Android will just look for the same exact file name, but only in the land folder. Okay, I think I've made that clear. I'll stop talking about it now. Now I also want to show you what I did in the main activity. I'll pull up the emulator again. Now I used a list view. We haven't used a list view yet, but we will in the next chapter. Chapter 6 will introduce you to that. But a list view is just showing a list of items, basically. Now this looks kind of funny, but I wrote some code that will automatically detect all the activities that are in an app. And you can check out that code if you want to. I put quite a few comments in there to hopefully make it a little clearer if you're interested in this. But it came in handy because now whenever I add a new activity to this app, it will automatically appear in this list just because of the nature of the code. This is a little bit like Java reflection. I'm not sure if any of you have ever used it before, but it's a pretty cool feature of Java where you can kind of inspect classes and packages and get a whole bunch of information about them. So it's like that, but it's Android's version of it. So I just used, it's called the Package Manager API. I used those classes to look inside the code for this app and find all the activities. So like I said, if I were to add another activity to this app, I wouldn't have to do anything to the code in the main activity. It would automatically just appear as an item in the list here. But that's not really what this chapter is about. So if you don't care about that stuff, then just don't look at that code. But if you're interested, check it out. So I can click on these. Whoops, actually clicking on this one doesn't do anything because we're already in the main activity here. But I created an activity with a relative layout, which is this one. And again, notice that when I rotate the device with the Control F11, then we'll get a different layout here. So just rotate it back and hit the back button here to go back to the main activity. And so that was the relative one, and here's a linear layout. And these don't have anything in them yet. That's what you're going to do. You're going to add GUI components to these. And finally, there's a grid layout. So these were the layouts that chapter 5 discussed. So I've set up the project for you. All right, let's check out the code in the main activity very quickly here. So I'm going to open up the Java folder, and I'm still in the project view. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the Android view. This is the one that we work with mostly, but just so you know, if you want to get to those, well, you don't even need to use that project view. I'll show you another way to find the alternative layouts while still using the Android view. But I don't know why, but they don't show those that layout land when you're in the Android view for some reason. It doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe it has something to do. It looks like there's a 2 here. I wonder if that. Okay, so I see what's going on now. I didn't realize this. So this view is actually doing some magic, and it's showing us the two variations under. This is a virtual folder, I guess. It doesn't really exist, but the Android view makes it look like it exists. So our 2 different views are in this virtual folder. That's a little bit confusing. And I see here this one says land, so that's probably telling me that that's the landscape one. All right, anyways, I wanted to navigate to the main activity here, and that's this one. Now, like I said, if you're interested, you can go ahead and follow through the code that retrieves all the activities in the application, and that if you want to check that out, that would be this method, get activities, which is down near the bottom. I think I remember putting it down there, and that just returns an array list of strings, and the array list is made up of the activity names. Now the activity names also include the package name, so that's what all that extra stuff is over here. So you can see that the package is actually app.com.example.android user interface. So this should look familiar. Your package names are going to be different because I think you might have your username in them. I'm sorry, the package names you've done for your projects up until now will probably look a little bit different than this. But anyway, so this is the package name. And we remember we specify the package name when we set up our application, a new project, that is. All right. So I'm not going to talk about this code too much, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask me about them if you're interested. We just use the package manager to create an array list of activity names, and again that includes the packages, and then we use that array list to populate the list view. So you don't have to worry about that because we're going to bump into that in chapter 6. And the other code that's in here is I've got some code that will handle the clicks or the presses on the list view. So when an item in the list view is pressed, then we figure out what activity name is being pressed on, and we launch an intent. Now this should look familiar to you. We launch an intent that starts that activity. So we've seen this before. This is slightly different, and like I said, I put comments in here to try and guide you through it a little bit. So check it out if you're interested. All right, but that's not the main focus of this project here. So what I want to do here is give you a little bit of advice on working with layouts and designing your user interfaces, because it can be pretty tedious, and if you know some tricks, it will really speed it up, and it actually makes it kind of fun. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my activity main layout, so just the regular one here, and I'm going to double click on that one to pull that up, and you can see here is the XML code for that, and we've seen stuff like this. And what you can do here to make things a lot easier than just typing in raw text is you can switch to the design tab here. This might take a while, a minute or so, for it to render what your phone might look like. But once I get into this view, and I know it's kind of hard to see right now, maybe I'm kind of pressed for space. Let me reorganize a little bit here and see if I can make it a little bit easier to see. But that's not too bad. Now, this will make things a lot easier for you, because rather than having to type in all the code by hand, what I usually do is I'll just drag something on here, and then that'll put the basic XML for that component in there, and then I'll just tweak the XML as needed rather than having to type everything from scratch. So for example, right here, I think I'll go ahead and add a text view somewhere, and then there's just a plain text view here. Let's just go ahead and drag that. I'm going to try and drag that right there. I don't know if I got it right or not, but the other thing that I want to show you is you should make use of, well, a couple things. First, I'll show you the code. So after I drag that, it added that text view right here, and this is kind of nice because it automatically puts the standard Android attributes in here for you, so you don't have to type all those ones too, and it'll give you a default label, and we know that these labels should come from the string resources file, but when you're just playing around, I think it's okay to hard code them in, which is what I've done in this, and it slaps an ID on here, and a lot of times you're going to want to change the ID because but anyways, so I've added that text view here. I'm going to switch back to the design view, and this is really handy over here. This is the component tree, it's called. So let's say I dragged my user interface component into the wrong place, and so right here you can see that that text view 2 that I just created, maybe I don't want that nested inside of this linear layout. Maybe I want it at the bottom of the screen, so I'll put it underneath the list view. So that'll move it for me, and this comes in handy because especially with relative layouts, if you remember from the book, you've always got to specify what the component that you're working with is relative to. So by dragging it from inside the linear layout to underneath the list view, it automatically updated all those attributes for me. So anyways, I just wanted to point out this component tree and how useful that can be. And the other thing I want to show you is, now the book doesn't mention this, but if you look closely here, you see that I've got a relative layout. That's the main layout for the whole layout. But you can nest layouts inside of layouts, and the book never mentions that. So what I've done here is I've got a relative layout for my root, and then inside of there I've got a linear layout. So you can mix and match and nest layouts within your main layout. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this here. Delete that, and so just wanted you to know that you could use these tools to help you. The other thing I want to show you too is you can rotate the device right here, and now it's looking at my other layout, the one for landscape mode, and now I'm working in a different layout. So that's what that little tool does here too. So go back to portrait here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open up the layout for the linear activity, which is this one, activity_linear. So I'll just double click on that, and that pulls it up in design view here. And now here's your assignment to make use of the GUI components that I listed for you in the assignment. So you can have some fun playing around with the design view and then comparing it to your the XML that you get when you make your changes. I'm just going to go ahead, I'm just going to pick one right here. I think I'll pick the checkbox, and I'll just drag that into my linear layout here. And there's my checkbox, and I'm going to switch back to the text view here, and I'm going to change the label. So here's the label here. It says new checkbox, and I'm going to call it, I'm just going to call it my checkbox for now. All right, and then the other part of this assignment was to start getting familiar with the code that you write in your activities to interact with the GUI components that are in your layout. So I'm going to jump over to the linear layout activity, and if you notice the ID, I'll just stick with the ID that Android Studio created for me here, which is just checkbox, and notice it's camel case, so there's a capital B there, all one word, checkbox, but B is capital, and that's known as camel case. I think I might have mentioned that before, not sure. But anyways, I'll jump over to the code for the linear activity, and now what we want to do is hook into that checkbox. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a variable for this class for that checkbox. So the data type is checkbox, and then we'll just call it checkbox. And I hope this doesn't confuse anybody, but this is a common thing when you're just practicing, is you can just use the same variable name as the data type, but use a lowercase letter here. So here's the data type over here, checkbox, and here's the variable name. So I'll just leave that as null for now, but by placing this outside of any method in the class, so it's in the class, it's inside the class, but it's not inside any method of the class. So it's not inside the onCreate. It's not, at least the declaration is not inside any of the methods in here, such as onCreate, onCreate options menu, on options item selected. And we haven't talked about these. We've only talked about the onCreate method so far as the methods that are in this class right now. So you don't have to worry about these other two. But the point is that this variable is global to this class, so it can be seen anywhere from in this class. If I had declared this checkbox inside the onCreate method, then none of these other methods would see it because it would have local scope inside of onCreate, and it wouldn't be visible outside of the onCreate method. Hopefully that's something that you learned about in Java 1. But anyways, so I'm going to put the declaration up here so it's visible to any method in the class, but I'm going to actually initialize that checkbox in the onCreate method because the onCreate method is where we set up our activity. So by the time the onCreate method runs, it will have set up our layout for us. And the next thing we need to do then is get references to those components in the layout. So that's what I'm going to do for this checkbox right now. And we've done this before, but I'm going to do checkbox equals, and we have to cast this to the proper data type, which is checkbox. And then the method that we use for getting a handle is find view by ID. In this case, it's r.id, and then we called it, the ID we gave it was just checkbox like this, I believe. So that allows us to get a reference to that checkbox. Now there are a few different ways to detect when this checkbox is interacted with by the user, and basically in the case of a checkbox they would just press on it to either check it or uncheck it. The book shows you the easiest way, which is to add that onClick attribute to your XML file. So I'm going to jump back over to the XML file. Where's that? That's right here. And you add an onClick attribute to it. Android onClick equals, now we'll give it a method name like on checkbox. Be careful of the case. Pressed. I'm just making this up as I go along right here. So that means that we'll have to have a method in our activity to handle that. And as I think of it right now, there's one thing, very important thing that I forgot to mention when I was talking about how we use different layouts depending on the orientation. Not only can we use different layouts for when the orientation changes, we can use different layouts for different screen sizes too, because a phone screen is a lot smaller than a tablet, and you can create different layouts that match better to the screen size too. And it's the same sort of mechanism where you create a folder for different screen size devices, and then you go ahead and create a duplicate of the layout file for the activity you're dealing with, and you put them in those different screen size folders. Now I put a link, if you want to learn more about that, I've got a link in activity main that will give you more information about that. So I just jumped over to activity main here, and here's that link right at the top. So here's the page that talks about different layouts for different orientations and screen sizes, and here's the link right here on line 26. So check it out. And now, I mean, this is tedious. There's a lot of, you could end up making lots and lots of layouts because of this. But if you want to have a really good app that works really well on different devices, then this is something you're going to have to deal with as an Android developer. So let's see, where were we? We just added the onClick attribute to the layout file right here on checkbox on checkbox pressed. I just made that name up right there. I'm going to copy that because we're going to have to use this in our code here for the linear activity. So what we need to do here is create that method. So I'm just going to, it's got to be public, and it has to have a void return type. Now I'm just going to go ahead and paste in that method, and it's going to have a parameter that's a view data type. So here's our method stub for that. And what we can do here is to determine whether the box has been checked or not checked. Well, you see this, I need to import the view class. That's what that symbol is saying, cannot resolve symbol view. So we do Alt Enter to take care of that. That should fix it. I think it did. And I don't necessarily like the way well, I guess you gotta put your cursor inside that view data type, and then do Alt Enter. So there, now it went ahead and did the import for us. We've seen that before. So let's just create a Boolean variable in here, true or false, because that's what we're trying to determine whether or not the checkbox is checked or unchecked. It's going to be a Boolean that we need. So we'll call it Boolean. We'll actually, that's the data type, but we'll call it checked. So if this is true, then the checkbox will be checked. So what we want to do here is do view. Oh, we probably want to cast this actually first. So, and this is the code to do that. And this is on I'm looking at the book right now. What page is that? This is on page 211. So we want to cast to a checkbox. Then the syntax goes like this: is checked. This is a little bit funky, the syntax, but now remember, view is a superclass of checkbox, and by using view, this will cover any type of component that we want to listen to clicks on. So that makes this mechanism really versatile because it can handle any type of GUI component. But what gets passed in by Android is the generic, the superclass. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say generic though. That's a little bit misleading. And because, I mean, we don't want to have different versions. I'm fumbling here. I'm gonna have to erase some of this when I'm done. So this is the code for finding out whether the checkbox is checked or not. It's a little bit funky, but because the data type that's getting passed into this method by Android is a view, and view is a superclass of checkbox. Another way to say it is that a checkbox is a subclass of view, but in order to work specifically with the checkbox properties, we have to cast it from view to checkbox. And we can do that simply because a checkbox is a view. So what we're doing is we're just casting it to be more specific from its general super type down to its true data type. Alright, so the other part of your assignment is to get familiar with toasts. So you are going to do a lot of toasts in this assignment. So toast dot, and you'll get familiar with this. We'll pass in, now you can do this, and we've seen this before where you have to pass this around quite a bit. I think we've seen this with starting activities and things like that. This happens a lot in Android where you're passing, it's called passing the context around. So this toast method might need to know who's calling it, and we tell it by passing the context in. In this case, this is the linear activity right here. So sometimes the code inside this method here might need to refer to the context or the activity that's calling the method, and that's why we're passing this in here. Now this can get a little bit funky if you're toast is inside an inner class. Let's not worry about that for the moment, but we'll see that. I think we'll see that in the next chapter. So the next parameter is the message that we want to toast up. So I am going to say the check box. Well, let's let me just back up here a second. Sorry for the confusion. All right. I realize now that I have a syntax error in two places, or I changed it, but up here, I marked this up here to remind me. I had checkbox, but I had a lowercase b here instead of an uppercase b. So the data type is actually checkbox with a capital B there, and I made the same mistake over here. So it happens, and I'm actually colorblind, so I have a hard time seeing the red. I didn't see it. I think it was red, and if I saw it, I would have known right away that I had some sort of error. But what I should do is change my preferences and turn this to dark or something that my eyes can see better. But anyway, so let's start from back here. And I was kind of fumbling around anyways. But what we want to do is we're going to make a toast here. So we learned about toasts in chapter 5 too, and they come in handy when you're just testing things. So we're going to do toast, and now this is a static method because we don't have to create an instance of toast to call this method. We can just go right through the class, the toast class. So make text, and the first parameter is going to be the context, which is this activity, and here's a shortcut for doing this. Now this doesn't always work because if your toast is nested inside an inner class of the activity, then you can't use this because this would be referring to the inner class and not the outer class, which would be the activity. So we might run into this. It's pretty common. You can use simply use this. I think we've seen this before when we start activities, or you can do get application context, and this is what you would do if you were working inside a nested inner class. We'll worry about that when we get to it, but anyways, you can use this, and the reason why we have to pass this around, and it's kind of known as passing the context around, is because the toast method, this method make text right here, might actually need to know who called it. So we just pass that right into the method as a parameter, and I'm not exactly sure what it does in the case of toast.makeTest, but there are many examples where you might call a method and the code inside the method might need to know what activity, might need to know some information about the activity that actually called the method. So that's why we see passing this around quite a bit. Now what I'm going to pass in here for the second parameter is the message itself. So this is what we'll see inside the toast. And I'll just do checked equals, and then I'm going to concatenate that Boolean variable, which is also called checked right there. So we'll see what this looks like in just a second. Now the final parameter to the make text is how long you want the toast message to appear for. And there's a static variable that you can use. So you go toast dot, you can do length long or length short. So in this case, let's just do length short. And then the other thing you have to do is you have to do dot show to actually make the toast message appear. And this mechanism, I don't remember if we talked about this yet in this class or not, but when you have one method call followed by another one, it's called method chaining. So you can see right here, this is the static method of the toast class called make test getting called right here. And then right after that method call, we put another method call right in here, right all on the same line. That's called method chaining. And you'll see that a lot in Java and in Android. So let's go ahead and run this real quick. So my app is launched in the emulator, and in this example here, I was working with the linear activity, which is this one right here. So I'll go ahead and click on that. And hopefully we'll see our checkbox. Oh, I got an error here. Let me find out what that's all about. All right, I'm not really sure what happened there because my activity ended up coming up. So I don't know if it was a glitch with the emulator or what, but what it's making me realize is that because this is an online class and we're not meeting face to face, you guys don't get to see a lot of the troubleshooting that goes into this stuff, which would be really helpful. So what you need to do is look through the logcat right here to look for errors. Now, in my case, I don't think there really was an error in my code because, like I said, eventually the activity just came up. I'm going to hit the back button and try that again. So it was when I clicked here is when we saw that weird behavior. So I'll press it again and see what happened. All right, now it's working just fine. But anyways, this is making me realize that I should probably try and find a good way to demonstrate some techniques for finding where your errors are when you're getting errors and you're not sure what's going on. Some of you probably already run into this, but that would be a good thing to do here. So anyways, when I check the box, that our little click handler method called on checkbox pressed is going to fire, and it's going to no, I just saw a flash again there, which was kind of strange. But you can see the toast message tells you whether the checkbox is checked or not. So this is how you can get information from your user. One more thing I want to tell you that's going to save you a ton of time on this project is that you're going to be able to cut and paste your code a lot without having to make any changes. And what I mean by that is you're going to be putting your checkbox in more than one layout, but when you do that, you can use the same ID. Now, let me just bounce over to the relative layout once here. So, excuse me. So here's the relative layout, and we'll just use the portrait one. Go to design view here, and I'm gonna grab a checkbox just like what we just did in the grid or the linear layout. I'll drag it in here just like that. I'm not really too concerned with where I put it for this demo purpose, but what I want to show you is now Android Studio is going to give it an ID of checkbox 2 because we've already got a checkbox in one of the other layouts. But there's no reason why I can't use the same ID here. I think we called it just checkbox. I think we changed the default from checkbox 1 to checkbox. Let me go check that activity in the linear layout. So what did we call that? What was the ID? Yes, so we gave it an ID of checkbox. By default, I think that, okay, maybe this is the default that Android Studio gave it for us. But as you can see, once we dragged a checkbox into our relative activities layout, it incremented it to checkbox 2. Now, what you can do, since these are in different layouts, is you can use the same ID, just like that. So you can have the same ID for a GUI component as long as it's in a different layout. And in fact, the other thing I'm going to do here is use the exact same onClick method call. So I'm going to go on Android onClick equals, and here's the one we made in the previous step. So I'll use that one. And then I can, I'll save that here, and then go over to my code in the linear activity, and I can just go ahead and copy this method right here because it's got the same name and has the same code as what we're going to be using in the relative activity. So then I'm going to go to the Java class for the relative activity over here, double click on that, and I'm just going to paste this in here right under the onCreate method. And I think this is just asking me if I want to import this stuff too, and I do, because the imports aren't there in the class yet, so I'll just click OK here. And now the other thing that I need to do here is create my variable, my class variable for that checkbox. So I'll go check box. Now this time I'm careful that I have a capital B there, and we'll give the variable name checkbox with a lowercase c, and then we'll leave that null for now, but we have to initialize it in the onCreate here, and so that's going to be checkbox equals, got to cast it to a checkbox, data type like that, and then find view by ID, and then we'll do r.id.checkbox. So this will save you quite a bit of time, and it just becomes an exercise in copying and pasting here. So I'm going to go ahead and save this and launch the app real quick here. See what happens. And I was just playing around with the grid activity before, so that's what's up from the last time. Oops. So here it is. This, by the way, is a widget that I've been playing with, a home screen widget, which I don't think we're going to get into this class, but it's kind of fun stuff. All right, so what I want to do is go to the relative activity, and there you see the checkbox, and everything just works after the copy and paste. So that'll save you a lot of time doing this, because you don't have to give those all the checkboxes you use in different layouts can have the same ID, and you can use the same method name for the click event, and you can just cut and paste that method right into the proper Java class. Alright, I think that's all you need to get going, so I'm going to sign out. So have a good night.